Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Zap, presented by a Full Press Coverage. We're going to do something a little different today, Sap, and that is not start with the Celtics. We're going to start with the Lakers today. How about that, Sap? What a nice co-host I am to start talking about your series that you care more about instead of my series. That's how unselfish I am, Sap.
Yeah, conveniently after they lost by 20 plus points in game two. Right. Yeah. If they had won last night and gone up 2-0, we would have been starting with the Celtics and we might have moved on to the Heat, the Knicks, the Nuggets, the Suns, and something else before getting to the Lakers. But go ahead, lay it on me.
Yeah, no. This you've known me for long enough to know exactly why I do what I do, Sap. Lakers lost last night, 127-100. So I mean, really, they got just destroyed. And mostly from between the second and third quarters was when the Warriors did their damage. As the Lakers actually came out to a good start, winning the first quarter 33-26, starting to look a little bit like game one, but then the Warriors really took over. And Sap, when we previewed this series, we said if Anthony Davis plays well, the Lakers will win the series. If Anthony Davis doesn't play well, the Lakers will lose the series. Well, game one, Anthony Davis, 44 minutes, 30 points, 5 assists, 23 rebounds, 4 blocks. Game two, Anthony Davis, 11 points, 7 rebounds, 3 blocks, 4 turnovers. He was a minus 22 in that game. Sap, basically exactly what we said. Davis plays well, they win. Davis plays poorly, they lose.
So all you need him to do is have 4 really good games, and you win the series 4-3 or 4-2 if it comes before Game 7. Pretty much, right? I mean, it was similar against Memphis. He had some incredible games against Memphis and some really bad games against Memphis. They did win a game when he had, I believe, 11 points and 12 rebounds, and that was an overtime win, which was Game 4, which was the pivotal win in that series. Put them up 3 games to 1.
Less margin for error with Memphis, though, right?
Right. Yeah, because Golden State makes you pay. And Klay Thompson showed why he's a future Hall of Famer, and I thought should have been, top 75 player in the history of the league. He didn't make it. Reggie Miller made it. I think Klay Thompson's better than Reggie Miller. That's a debate for another day. But Klay Thompson always comes up big in these big games. And after a disastrous game one for Klay Thompson, he stepped up in game two. He was the leading scorer for Golden State. They spread the floor by going a little bit smaller at times with Kevon Looney coming off the bench. And Golden State, which is a well-coached team, we've seen this for years with Steve Kerr, will make changes within a series. You saw him go to Andre Iguodala in the starting lineup in Game 4 of the 2016 Finals against Cleveland to try to combat LeBron James. We saw him bring Draymond Green off the bench in the prior series against Sacramento. He makes those changes within a series, and that's why he's one of the best coaches. But, yeah, this was not a good night for the Lakers after a good start. Like you said, Jet, 33-26 after the first quarter. LeBron was on fire. I mean, he was hitting all the shots, looked like LeBron of 5-6 years ago. But then it gets to a point where if you're down 20-plus points late in the third quarter, early fourth quarter, call it off at that point because you've got another game in 2 days. As Danny Ainge was often quoted as saying, this is not the Tour de France. So the Lakers win a close game one, get blown out in game two. You know what that means? It's 1-1. It's a best of 5, and the Lakers have home court advantage at this point.
Yeah, they did what they needed to do in Golden State, which was earn a split. You would just like to, if you're a Lakers fan, see a little bit more consistency out of them. And that Anthony Davis is Mr. Inconsistent. You said, his ceiling, I think you said this the other day, Sap, is his ceiling is at the very top of the league. Jokic, Giannis, Embiid, when he plays to his full ability, he's that good. The reason he's not talked about in the same breath as those guys is they're all extremely night in, night out consistent, and Anthony Davis is not. Here's the number I have the biggest problem with, Sap, 11 shots. That's just not going to get it done. Ryu Hachimura off the bench, 14 shots. And he had one of the lone Lakers who had a pretty solid game and shot pretty well from the floor. But Anthony Davis took 19 shots in game one, scored 30 points, as I mentioned, and the Lakers won. Takes 11 shots in game two, and the Lakers get blown out. I'm not saying if he took 8-9 more shots, the Lakers would have won the game, but we've talked about this with Anthony Davis before. He's too passive sometimes, and when the Lakers' biggest advantage is the fact that the Warriors don't have anybody that can defend the paint or cover Anthony Davis, you can't just put up 11 shots in a game and say, the defense was played. They made some adjustments on Golden State's side, and they were hitting shots. He can't take 11 shots, Sap. It's not nearly enough.
No, and what makes Davis such a tough matchup is not only is he capable of scoring 30, 35 points, whatever the case may be, he's also an excellent passer, right? Because let's not forget, when he was a junior in high school, he was a 6'3" guard. He had that growth spurt, became 6'11", and then went to Kentucky and won a national championship in 1 year in Kentucky. So he has all that skill set, where he can also beat you as a very good passer, and he can also face the basket. He can beat you with his back to the basket. He's such a versatile player. If he's cooking down low, that opens up the offense for the rest of the players, right? Whether it's Austin Reeves or Hachimura or Dennis Schroeder, or maybe gets LeBron going from the outside, which is kind of a rarity these days. But last night, LeBron was hitting his perimeter shots. So that's where Anthony Davis can be such a difficult matchup, is not just scoring, but also passing the basketball and really igniting that offense from the inside out, whereas Golden State is more of an offense that's from the outside in. So it's kind of a contrast in styles, which this whole series is about anyway. Lakers are a big physical defensive team. Golden State more of a speed team. Spread you out. In Golden State, as we saw last year and we've seen for the last 8 years, they also play good defense. Golden State, they defend the 3-point arc at a very high level. So we're gonna have to see what happens with that. But yeah, Davis is the X factor in this series. He'll be the X factor in every series because he can be the best player on the court on any given night, and then in other games he's just average. Like I said, if he gives them 4 elite games, they will win this series.
And Sap, you talked about coming into this series how important the Lakers defense was and how great they had been playing defensively post trade deadline and the last series against Memphis. So what happened to their defense last night where they give up 127 points to the Warriors, and 2 quarters they give up plus 40 points in the second and plus 40 points in the third?
A lot of that is Golden State. How many times have we seen them in a 12 or 24-minute stretch just go off where, it's just 3 after 3 after 3, and then it opens up the court to the point where now you can dribble, penetrate, drive to the basket, get the other team in foul territory, foul trouble. This is what Golden State's done for nearly a decade now. So I think when Golden State had Kevon Looney on the bench to start the game with some sort of illness, they went smaller, so they spread the Lakers out on defense, and the Lakers weren't able to keep up with that. We're in a league now, Jet, with the skill level being at what it is. You can do a lot of nice things on defense, and the shooters are so good, whether it's Klay Thompson or Steph Curry or Jordan Poole or any other player on Golden State, that you can do what you have to do everything right by the book, and the other team just makes shots, and you have to tip your cap, and that's what Golden State's done for nearly a decade now.
Did the Lakers need to make an adjustment after this game, Sap, or is it just a case of Anthony Davis didn't play well and the Warriors did what they've been doing, like you said, for a decade?
I think it's mostly Anthony Davis. Yeah, if he goes out on Saturday night in LA and pushes forward, imposes his will, is able to score down low, get some folks in foul trouble, control the pace down there, then the Lakers will be in good shape. Again, as far as the defensive end of it, maybe you've got to be a little quicker out to the shooters, because you can't give the Golden State shooters, especially Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, an extra step, because those guys are that good. So maybe be a little bit tighter on your closeouts out there at the 3-point arc. But yeah, I think a lot of it does start on the offensive end, right? Because now you're making baskets, you're kind of slowing down the Golden State offense, so they're not playing in transition. What Golden State's so good at is not just scoring off a transition, but setting their offense up off a transition, which leads to open threes. And, almost like the Mike D'Antonio offense from a decade ago, where, 7-8 seconds into the shot clock, someone has a wide open 3. And if it's Klay
Right.
Thompson or Steph Curry, put 3 on the board.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's a reason that Golden State's ripped off a bunch of championships. It's because no one's really figured out how to combat what they do.
Mhm.
At least game in and game out. For a game, you may be able to figure it out. Then they'll make a little bit of a tweak, or they'll start hitting more shots, and suddenly they blow you out by almost 30 points. We saw it in the finals last year with the Celtics. Celtics for game 1 look okay. They are younger. They're hungrier. This team's got it. And then, the Warriors came back, won game 2. Celtics win game 3 and say, okay, well, they counterpunched. They've really figured it out. And then the Warriors proceeded to sweep the rest of the series. So, the Lakers are trying to figure out something that no one's really been able to figure out, which is when this Golden State Warriors team is fully healthy, how do you eliminate them from the playoffs? And so far, Golden State has had the answers for every team. So it's kind of up to the Lakers to figure out okay, what can we do that other teams haven't been able to be doing successfully against this Warriors team?
Golden State's lost exactly 2 playoff series since they became the most dominant team in basketball, won 4 titles. Let's not forget they lost in the play-in a few years ago, and then they tanked another season, didn't even approach the playoffs. They've only lost 2 playoff series during this run. One was Game 7 to the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016 when LeBron James played games 5, 6, and 7 with a chip on his shoulder and played at a level that maybe he's never reached before or since. And that's saying
Yeah.
a lot for a guy who I think is the greatest player ever. The other series they lost was when they lost Kevin Durant early in the series and played, a total of 10 minutes in that series against Toronto. And then Klay Thompson gets hurt in game 6. So we know Steph Curry was kind of hobbled in that series. And that thing went 6 games. Toronto winning the title. So they've only lost 2 series during this stretch. So a lot of teams have probably sat back and tried to analyze how to stop this, and none have been successful. We thought Sacramento was in really good shape in the last series, won the first 2 games at home. Then we're able to get game 7 at home, and they just couldn't finish it off despite having a halftime lead in game 7. This is a tough team to beat. They're resilient, they're smart, they're well coached. And when you win as often as they have, you just have a lot of confidence going into tight situations, and that's why Golden State's won 4 of the last 8 championships.
Yeah, they're not gonna do a Boston Celtics and throw a game away down the stretch. They don't play nervous at all, and they, because of the 3-point shooting, they are not worried about being down double digits at any point because they feel like, okay, we could just shoot ourselves back into this, and usually they do. They're like the horror movie villain, right, Sep? That just, you think, okay,
Yep.
we've figured this out, where they're dead, and they come back to life. They're grabbing your ankle from, you don't see where they're coming from, and suddenly, before you know it, everybody's dead around you, and the horror villain's the only person left standing. So
You just described Draymond Green to a T.
yeah, there you go. So far, Draymond has yet to inflict his foot on anybody's testicles in this series, but it is still just 2 games in, so we'll have to see. I think Draymond very much wants to play with LeBron next year, so I think he's on his best behavior. But again, this Warriors team is just. You gave the 2 examples when they've gotten knocked out, and those are 2 pretty big caveats. One, LeBron James, arguably the greatest player of all time. And I think he's the second greatest player. You think he's the greatest? You're splitting hairs at this point. Played at the ultimate highest level of his ability. Okay, that knocked the Warriors out in a game 7. And then the other time they lost their arguably their best player and their third best player. So, has besides the great player playing at the ultimate level and a team being hurt, no one's really figured out how to beat this team. So how do you do it? Do you do kind of what the Kings did? Do you do what the Celtics did through 2 games? Do you try to replicate what the Rockets did a few years ago when they were at the doorstep of knocking out this Warriors team? Again, there's no clear-cut answer, and that's what makes this team so daunting to play. It's like, well, we don't really have a path to follow that somebody is trailblazed at this point. How do we do it? LeBron can't, as great as he still is, Sap, he can't play at the level that he did when he was with Cleveland, when he beat this Warriors team in 7 games. He's just not able to do that anymore. No one can fault him for that. That's just like being a human being. He's aged in some ways, still terrific player, but you can't expect him to be able to single-handedly beat this Warriors team, Sap.
He was 31 at that point. He's 38 at this point. A lot of mileage on those tires, obviously. That's why it falls a lot to Anthony Davis. So Anthony Davis can be a better wingman, literally, than Kyrie Irving. Anthony Davis better than Kyrie Irving, but Kyrie Irving did display an ability to make big shots in that series, and we know that Kyrie Irving is an outstanding closer. Anthony Davis is a guy who could kind of dominate from the start and just be an impossible matchup. So this series comes down to Anthony Davis. The nights he's good, the Lakers are going to be tough to beat, whether against Golden State in this series, Denver in the next series, the Lakers in the finals. He's a tough matchup, but he's going to have those ups and downs. And like I said, if he gives you 4 elite games, you're going to win the series, because I think LeBron's going to be consistent night in and night out. We know what he can do. I mean, if he's scoring 22 one night, maybe he gets 30 in another game, but he's going to rebound at a high level. He's going to set up your offense. He's going to play good defense. He's contributing in some fashion. The other players, if 2 or 3 of them can step up, whether it's Austin Reeves or Archie Moore or Schroeder, they can fill in the gaps enough to get them over the top. But this falls to Anthony Davis without question.
Yeah, and it's as a Laker fan, Sap, I'm sure it's incredibly frustrating to see this guy that's so talented, and in game one, you're like, "Holy crap, this is how we're going to win the series. He's going to be dominant. They don't have anybody that can cover him." And then in game two, he looks like a jag out there, and so it's like, what Anthony Davis are you going to get? If I'm LeBron James, I am talking to him, every time out, every play, saying, "We need you. Come on, Anthony. We need you to do this. Like, we cannot win unless you play well."
Well, obviously, it's a psychological thing at this point, right? Or a lack of confidence or focus. Like, I don't know how you deal with that. Like, not all athletes respond the same way to certain motivational tools, right? Like, you have to treat every guy differently. Like, we saw Tom Brady for 20 years. He responded to challenges and being coached hard by Bill Belichick. Like, maybe another quarterback wouldn't respond well to that. So you've got to
Right.
understand how to deal with Anthony Davis. Is it something where you kind of have to show him some love? Does it have to be tough love? Does it have to be a demanding tone? I don't know. LeBron's a really good leader. I think he's always been able to get the most out of his teammates. I'm sure after being with Anthony Davis now for 4 seasons, he's kind of got an idea how to get him going. And, look, that's where it comes down to. Because if you tell me before the game Anthony Davis is going to have 32 points and 18 rebounds and 6 blocks, I'll tell you the Lakers are going to win. If you tell me he has 14 points, 10 rebounds, some problems with fouls and some turnovers, then they're probably going to lose.
Yeah, I think it's it seems weird to say it, but I think it's that simple. It's weird to say he's got a confidence thing, because, like, wouldn't you feel pretty confident if against the defending champions in game one you put up 30 points and 23 rebounds and 4 blocks and say, "Hey, man, they can't cover me. I'm feeling pretty good." And then next game and you put out a dud? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. You would feel confident after the really good game, I would think, instead of he kind of shrunk in game two, but you played so well in game one. It's kind of like a weird disconnect.
Maybe he's got masochistic tendencies and he likes to put
Maybe, Sam.
himself through some very difficult things. And maybe he's just a Green Bay Packers fan and he can't help himself and be successful all the time.
That could be the case, Sap. But we will see how it continues to go for the Lakers. But it was, I think, as we said at the very beginning, Sap, as Anthony Davis goes, the Lakers will go. And I don't think that's true of just this series. I think it's true of if they advance and whoever they play, whether they play Phoenix or Denver, and if they get to the finals or whoever the heck they play in the finals, if Anthony Davis plays well, they'll probably win. If he doesn't, they'll probably lose. I'd wager money on it. Like you said, show me the stat line. You don't have to show me the box score. I can tell you if the Lakers won or lost that game in the playoffs. So we'll have to see how that story progresses. But we can turn our attention to my team, Sap, to the Boston Celtics, who rebounded pretty nicely from their game one massive disappointment, losing to the 76ers without James Harden. Without Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid was crowned MVP, which we'll talk about in a second, the other day, and decided to come back a little bit earlier than what we were expecting for game two. And it didn't make a lick of difference as the Celtics just toyed with the 76ers, crushing them 121-87 in that game, Sap. The strangest part about this game was not that Joel Embiid played and the Sixers didn't win, but that Jayson Tatum stunk and the Celtics still blew out the 76ers, Sap. Jayson Tatum was 1 of 7 from the floor, Sap, 0 of 3 from 3, 7 points, and the Celtics still won 121-87 in this game.
Tatum was the Celtics' 7th leading scorer, right, on Wednesday night. In fact, Pritchard had 8 points, right?
Yes, he did.
So,
My
which
guy.
is pretty amazing. Your guy, Peyton Pritchard with 8 points was the 6th leading scorer for the Celtics. Jayson Tatum was the 7th leading scorer. Now, Tatum was in foul trouble and he seemed to kind of get disengaged. But the game started with Jaylen Brown showing why he's such a great player. He came out very aggressive on both ends of the floor. He set the tone, and you just kind of built from there. As far as Embiid playing, at first I'm like, don't play him, bring him back for game 3, give him a couple extra days of rest. But from what he was talking about, to get healthy, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks of rest to get back healthy with the injury he's dealing with, and that's not going to happen. Maybe you get some rust off of him in game 2, and then you have him maybe more up to speed for game 3, which takes place tonight in Philadelphia. And the thing about Joel Embiid, this is the 3rd playoff series he's had against the Boston Celtics. He's 1-9 against the Celtics. in this now his third playoff series. The 76ers won game one without him. Now, I don't think they're going to win this series without him. Will they win it with him? I don't think so. I think the Celtics are just better. But it was just a strange night because James Harden went from getting 45 in game one and looking like James Harden circa 2017 with Houston to really laying a dud in game two. A lot of that had to do with the defensive pressure from Jaylen Brown. But we're seeing like these ups and downs by even great players like James Harden, Jayson Tatum. We just talked about Anthony Davis. But look, Kevin Durant had a horrible game two against Denver, 2 of 12 from 3-point range. So, it seems like Jimmy Butler's the only guy who night in and night out
Yeah.
plays at the same level, right? And maybe Devin Booker's the other guy, and other guys are just having huge games and bad games. Trae Young did this in the first series against the Celtics for the Atlanta Hawks. So maybe that's just where we're at in the NBA right now. It's a lot of inconsistent play, even from the top tier players.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like that, and I think it's very frustrating to fans if you have these guys who are MVP candidates, and Jayson Tatum finished fourth in the voting, and he's just wildly inconsistent. And we saw this in the playoffs last year. Fortunately, the Celtics' biggest advantage in the whole playoffs is their depth, and their depth is really what carried them in game two, Sap. Malcolm Brogdon, the sixth man of the year, 23 points off the bench, was lights out from 3, 6 of 10. Grant Williams played really, really well, 4 of 8 from 3.
Who's that? Grant who? Grant
Yeah,
who?
exactly. I know. And he didn't play at all in the first round. And now Joe Mazzulla said, okay, we're playing you in this round. Get ready, Grant. And he responded really well. Derek White shot the ball really well. Marcus Smart, I thought, had a really strong game. People were criticizing the amount of shots that he took. I thought he was 7-14 from the floor, so 50%, 1 of 4 from 3, not great from there. But I thought he had a really strong game and was doing more of what you and I like to see with him, and being strong around the basket. And he got a couple of and ones. But Tatum just was nowhere to be found. And the Celtics probably would have won this game by a lot more had Al Horford not been god awful from the floor either, Sep. 1 of 8 from 3 from Al Horford, who is one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. And the Celtics, again, still crushed the 76ers. So this is a hard one to make sense of, because the Celtics are just such a frustrating team in that they can play so well, and then they can also completely take games off like they did in game one. They're like, Embiid's not out there, we'll figure it out. And then they lose. They're their own worst enemy, Sap.
Yeah, you look at that game the other night. Tatum, 1 for 7, Horford 2 for 10. So they go 3 of 17 from the floor. They were awful. I mean, if you said that going into the game, Jayson Tatum and Al Horford are going to shoot 3 of 17 from the floor, how are the Celtics going to win, considering Joel Embiid's coming back and Harden's playing with a lot of confidence, and then they go ahead and win by 34 and are in complete control from really the midpoint of the third quarter on. But they are deep, right? Because you got Jaylen Brown, you've got Malcolm Brogdon, 6th man of the year. Derek White had a nice game. Marcus Smart had a nice game, like you said. And it was good to see Grant Williams back. We've been calling for him for pretty much the last month of the regular season, and even in that Atlanta series. I don't know if he's in Joe Mazzulla's doghouse, but I think he's going to be a key figure in this series, because even if he has to play 6-8 minutes against Joel Embiid, he can bang him around a little bit. Look, you're not stopping a player like Embiid, but at least it gives you a chance to show your depth, and I think he can be a key figure in this series and also going forward. So, yeah, they're the best team in basketball, Jeff. There's no question about it. If they just go out there, defend properly, take care of the basketball, share the basketball, and shoot a decent percentage from the floor. And that's not asking a lot. That's not like asking them to go do something out of the ordinary. They're going to win the championship. They're the best team. But sometimes, like you've said, they are their own worst enemy, and the team that could stop the Celtics from winning their 18th championship, more likely than not, the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, Sap, 6 turnovers, just 6 turnovers this last game. And that's an outstanding number. And sometimes that number is all you need to look at to see if the Celtics win or lose, is what their turnover number is like. In the finals last year, they couldn't keep the ball to themselves. They were just giving it to the Golden State Warriors. And it's very hard to win a basketball game when you continuously turn it over. They did that in game 1, 2, and didn't play any defense. In game 2, they played outstanding defense and didn't turn the ball over. So, it's self-inflicted wounds that really hurt this Celtics team the most. And I know you wanted to talk about, Sap, about Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. Jaylen Brown was, you mentioned this right when we started talking about this game, was the tone setter for the Celtics early on, taking the ball aggressively to the basket. He's the person on the Celtics who is the most aggressive driver of the basketball.
Mhm.
And he's gotten better and better at that. And he's also gotten better at that little mid-range in the paint turnaround shot. If the rim is, if the rim is taken away from him, which it was oftentimes in game 2, because Embiid was back in and Embiid had 5 blocks. Actually, that's where I felt Embiid was the most effective in his return, was on the defensive side. But Brown has been more consistent, I'd say, over the course of this year, even though Jayson Tatum finished 4th in MVP voting and Brown didn't receive any MVP votes. Tatum's highs are higher than Brown's, but Brown, at least offensively, is more consistent. The whole package of Jayson Tatum is a better player, but he still is frustrating because he has those nights where you said, like you said, Seth, he is disengaged. Brown at least seems to bring it every night. Some nights he's not going to shoot well from the floor, but he does have that intensity level, it seems, that Jayson Tatum can't find every night.
Sometimes it's about tone as well, and just kind of how they carry themselves. Jayson Tatum was the #1 recruit coming out of high school. He went to Duke. Duke players carry themselves a certain way, right? And again, he's a good-looking dude who's got an adorable 5-year-old son. The women love him. He's kind of this laid-back, chill guy who's
How many
mostly about his
sponsorships does he
brand.
have now, Sap, too?
More
Jeez.
than anyone. I mean, he's got a chip, he's got a sneaker, he's got a sub, he's got everything. Pizza. I mean, he's
Gatorade, yeah, everything.
America's salesman, right?
I
So,
know,
and
he
good for
really is.
him. Good for him. And he's such a likable kid, right? He's kind of like a mama's boy, and everybody loves Jayson Tatum. But again, the Duke connection is something that's there. They do carry themselves differently than other players. Jaylen Brown was a high recruit as well, right? Top recruit coming out of high school. Let's not say that he came out of nowhere. He went to Cal. Different mentality there. Now, you're talking about two of the great schools in this country, Duke and Cal. But, the two most famous athletes to come out of Cal were actually football players, Aaron Rodgers and Tony Gonzalez. Uh,
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown, probably the second best basketball player to come out of Cal behind Jason Kidd. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic than, say, the Duke players.
Well, they're not a
And look,
basketball school, Sap.
no,
Cal
no,
is.
it's more of a
They're not
football
known for
school.
their athletics.
No, no, not
They're
at
known for
all.
their academics.
Yes, and so is Duke. I mean, we've had presidents go to Duke, but Duke is known for basketball as well. And in the end, Jayson Tatum will probably turn out to be the greatest Duke player ever to play in the NBA, because there's only one Duke player in the Basketball Hall of Fame, and that's Grant Hill,
Yeah.
right? And I think Tatum, if he plays at this level for 5-6 more years, wins the championship, he'll surpass Grant Hill. I mean, Grant Hill faced a lot of injuries in his career. Kyrie Irving's a great player.
Yeah.
But certainly to me, Jayson Tatum is a guy, well, a talented player. We can agree on that. And he has won a championship thanks to LeBron, but he also helped LeBron in 2016. But Tatum, I think, has a chance to be the greatest Duke player ever without question. I mean, we're talking about a guy who I think will win an MVP at some point. But they carry themselves differently. Brown is much more serious. Like Tatum, I think, wants to be part of the club where he's friends with a lot of the opposing players. Brown plays with more of an edge. I don't think he wants to be friendly with the other players, right? Wasn't there a wedding that Jayson Tatum went to last year? Was it Draymond Green's wedding that he was invited to?
Somebody,
Right.
I think so. It was. Yeah, I'm trying to remember who it was, but
Someone's
yes,
wedding,
you're on the
but
right
he was
path there,
there.
Sep.
But he loved Kobe Bryant. He loves Kevin Durant. I think he respects the hell out of LeBron James. I get the feeling that Jaylen Brown, respects those guys, but he's not in awe of them. We've seen other players try to help him out, and he kind of slaps the hand away, like, get away from me. Plays with much more of an edge. Now, the thing I like about Tatum is every single year he's been in the league, and it's been 6 years now, his scoring average, his rebound average, and his assist average has gone up every single year. That's great improvement. So I don't want to shortchange what Jayson Tatum's become. He's a great player. I think he's obviously more talented than Jaylen Brown, but Brown plays more with an edge. Now, it can be a situation where Tatum's the better player, but Brown is the leader of the team and the trendsetter. You see what I'm saying? And that can happen on many teams. It doesn't always have to be the very best player being the leader. Like LeBron's been the leader of his team. Obviously, Michael Jordan was the leader of the Bulls. Kobe kind of, with Shaq, that was just a different type of dynamic. But I think that the gap is a lot closer than people think. This is not Jordan Pippen. This is not LeBron Wade, where it was clear who the best player was and who the second best player was. These guys are a lot closer, and I think you're going to see, obviously, Tatum be first team All NBA. I think Jaylen Brown's going to finish second team All NBA as a forward, which obviously will put into movement, the possibility of that supermax contract, which would be great for Jaylen Brown. So I think they're a lot closer than people realize. Is they just do it a little bit differently. Tatum is so smooth and elegant. Brown is much more. I wouldn't say robotic, but he's much more straight lined. As you said, he goes to the basket with authority. Where Tatum, he doesn't finish as strong. Sometimes it's really pretty to watch, but maybe he misses some makeable layups. But both of these guys are extraordinary, and you want to keep them together to try to win championships. But I think the gap is really close between these two superb players.
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw a kind of an interesting comparison in game 2, in that Tatum was struggling and he was kind of getting to the basket, but he was like trying to, do these cute little spins off the backboard, which usually work out for him. And Embiid was affecting him a little bit. Jaylen Brown was trying to dunk on people's heads. He tried to take away Joel Embiid's soul on the first time. He got blocked, maybe he fouled, and then he did end up dunking on Embiid later in the game. But yeah, very aggressive start for Jaylen Brown. And I think, like you said, the numbers for Tatum, he's improved all the way across the board every single year. Brown has really too. And what I think Brown has improved a lot of that is much more subtle, is that he was a guy who was just not passing the ball ever. He's improved. I wouldn't say he's a great passer, but he's improved a lot this season as a passer, where he's finding open men. Might just be a factor of that the Celtics have more guys who are able to get open that they're playing with. Brogdon can get open, White can get open. And so he has more guys to pass to, but he's gotten a lot better at that too. So Tatum gets talked about a lot, but I think you're right that they're not that far apart from each other's skill levels.
Yeah, and that's a good sign for the Celtics, because if Tatum finishes 4th in MVP voting and is generally considered a top 6 or 8 player, again, that's kind of something that you have to weigh in on at almost an everyday basis, because there are the older guys like Durant, Curry, and LeBron who's still right there, but maybe they're not quite what they were a few years ago because of age and injury factors. But we know how good Tatum is. Brown's certainly a top 15 player, especially if he's second team All NBA. Heck, that's quite an accomplishment for a guy who just has worked his butt off every year in the league, as has Tatum. And it's just that Tatum is so naturally gifted that sometimes it almost looks like he doesn't care. He cares. It's just he's so smooth that sometimes it looks like he doesn't care. It's almost like a similar vibe that Tracy McGrady would give off. Like, the guy was just so uber talented, it looked like he wasn't necessarily putting forth the max effort. Jayson Tatum, obviously didn't get to this point by being lackadaisical out there. He's a superb player, as is Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as game 3 goes, Sap Embiid's going to play again. He's, said that you mentioned his injury is something that would take, 4 to 5 weeks of rest to really recuperate. He looked okay, I'd say, in game 2. Offensively, I thought he looked a little bit slow. He's still, very dangerous mid-range shooter, and you can't just leave him open. He was effective defensively in blocking shots, but I thought the Celtics did a good job luring him out to the 3-point line and making him have to run back to the paint if the Celtics move the ball terrifically. That's sort of what their game plan has to be, I think, going forward, Sap, is that 1, you have to play defense with effort, which they didn't in game 1, they did in game 2. 2, don't turn the ball over. They did in game 1, they didn't in game 2. And 3 is, I know Mazzulla says shoot a lot of threes. I think it's more about moving the Sixers around defensively than shooting threes. It's having to bring them out to the 3-point line and then moving the ball around. I don't really care what the 3-point number is of how many shots they take. I care that they are making the Sixers work on defense, because the Sixers are not nearly as deep as the Celtics are, and their best player is somebody who historically has not been the best conditioned guy and is dealing with a bum knee right now. So if you're not, you have to make them work defensively.
Yeah, obviously you're talking about Embiid, and also Harden, their second best player, has never been like a conditioning freak himself. So if you make those two guys move a lot on defense, when they get on the offensive end, maybe they have a little less in the tank, and that can impact them on the offensive end.
Absolutely. So before we wrap up, we got about 5 minutes to go here, Sap, a little less. Some coaching news in the NBA as the Milwaukee Bucks fire Mike Budenholzer. He leaves Milwaukee having won a championship with them. That means back-to-back years, Sap, where a coach who's won a championship has been fired. Frank Vogel fired from the Lakers, and now Mike Budenholzer. So it doesn't buy you much job security, I guess, anymore, Sap, to win a title.
No, and before that, Nick Nurse is gone now in Toronto.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Yeah,
Nick Nurse is also gone. Forgot about that.
3 of the last 4
Jeez.
coaches that coach championship teams are out of jobs. And I think
Steve Kerr is looking around the corner, I guess.
Well, just watch how Golden State plays. I don't think he's going anywhere soon. He's outstanding. But yeah, Nick Nurse is now a free agent. Mike Budenholzer is a free agent. Frank Vogel's out there if anybody wants him. So yeah, there's three pretty good coaches, championship coaches available. Not a surprise. We talked about this after they were eliminated by Miami. It's been a weird 5 years. The last 5 years, the Milwaukee Bucks have more wins than any team in basketball. League MVP. Had a lot of disappointments in the playoffs. The Eastern Conference final, they had home court advantage. That was in the year with Budenholzer. Year they lost in Miami. Last year they lose in 7 to the Celtics in the second round, and this year
Yeah. And also, Sap, did you see the report too that Budenholzer's brother died in a car accident during the first round, and so that obviously affected him too. He didn't coach well, but it's tough, Sap. Like with these, there's external stuff, there's internal stuff. His best player was hurt. Hey, sorry, I lost you for a second, Sap.
Okay. Yeah, you can edit this, right?
Yeah, I can edit it, no problem. But I was saying that what was the last thing you heard me say?
You were talking about Budenholzer's brother dying in a car crash.
Yeah. So I was saying that, okay, I'll just start in 3, 2, 1. And with the brother dying and Giannis being hurt, it wasn't all on Budenholzer why Milwaukee lost, how they did to the 8 seed in Miami Heat. There's extenuating circumstances. So I guess my question for you, Sap, is do you think it was fair that he lost his job?
Probably so. I mean, I think maybe Giannis stepped into the front office and said it's time to move on. This is the way it is in the NBA. And also think that in the NBA and the NHL, and look, just about any sport, that these guys have about a 5-year shelf life. After 5 years, the message gets stale and it's time to move on. It's a horrible story, him losing his brother in a auto accident. I mean, imagine going now to the coach and saying, we feel sorry about what happened to you personally, but oh, by the way, you're also being fired. But I think Budenholzer maybe takes a year off to regroup, and then he comes back because he is an accomplished coach, and we'll see who Milwaukee hires as their next head coach. I'm sure Ime Udoka kind of wishes he didn't go to Houston and kept himself available for Milwaukee. But I think in terms of Ime Udoka, the first opportunity he got, he took, because again, with a lot that went on last year with the Celtics, I don't know how many opportunities are going to be there for him. So Milwaukee will get an accomplished coach. Maybe it's Nick Nurse. Who knows? They kind of recycle these guys a lot in the NBA, and that makes the most sense.
Better strippers in Houston for Ime Udoka, Sap.
That's true.
That's the one thing. We'll talk about this, I think, as we do our off-season preview and the season ends and stuff like that. It's just like, how is he going to stand in the locker room and say, don't do what I did, but listen to me now. It's going to be a tough sell, I think, to players to be like, okay, be on your best behavior if Udoka is the guy delivering that message.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for, Sap. There you go.
Especially with young guys. I mean, that's a young
I know,
team,
and they're all
right?
young on that team. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they could all be his sons. I mean, Ime Udoka is like, I think, 46. These guys are like 22. I mean, they're going to obviously, there may be a credibility problem there. But again, we don't know what happened. I'm sure within the annals of the NBA, people know. And they're just, although if one person knows, they may let it out at some point because it's tough to keep a secret.
Usually
everybody's in the mob and just swears to Omerta, and they're not going to let any of this stuff out. But Ime Udoka, Milwaukee would have been a really nice fit. I think he has some sort of relationship with Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis, and